Good evening, and tonight we are going to be studying Washington's leadership. This is one of the keys to victory for the Americans over Great Britain in the Revolutionary War. Our inquiry question is, how was George Washington able to lead troops to victory over Great Britain in the Revolutionary War? We're going to focus on three areas, and we will pick up and start that Washington was an inspiring leader. He was able to get people to fight for him and keep going. But let's set the stage a little bit and look at what Washington believed. By December of 1776, Washington was very discouraged. He's quoted as saying, "I am wearied to death. I think the game is pretty near up." Washington wasn't seeing a path to victory at this time, yet he continued to encourage his troops. He often would read aloud important documents. For example, with the passing of the Declaration of Independence in July of 1776, he read the entire document to every single person in the Continental Army. Reading this aloud and having other people read it aloud reminded the soldiers of what they were fighting for. It reminded them of the causes of the American Revolution. Later that year, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called The Crisis. If you remember, Thomas Paine's also the person who wrote Common Sense that called for declaring independence. Now, in this pamphlet, he is talking about what's going on in the country now that we're declared independence and in the state of the war. It says, "These are the times that tries men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands now deserves the love and thanks of men and women." This is an important line. Washington was able to use it to encourage the soldiers to stand because they will receive the love, he's saying, of men and women throughout the country. It encouraged the soldiers to keep fighting, and it encouraged them long enough so Washington could pull off a few victories that we'll see in the next slide. So in December of 1776, again, things aren't looking good. The Americans are losing many battles. They're starving, they're hungry, they're low on supplies. So it's Christmas night, 1776. And Washington and his troops are stationed on the Delaware River. The British have Hessian troops. If you remember, Hessians are the German hired troops on the other side at Trenton. And it's Christmas Eve, so Washington figures they would not expect an attack. They probably had a little bit too much to drink celebrating. So Washington decides, let's attack on Christmas night. So late in the night of Christmas night, it's cold, wet, as you see in this picture that we will analyze tomorrow in class. There's stories of ice on the river. Washington crosses the Delaware with all of his men in quiet and approaches Trenton. So at Trenton, they sneak attack the Hessians there, which leads to an American victory. In this battle, the Americans capture about 1,000 Hessian troops. The battle lasts only about an hour in length. The Hessians couldn't fight back because they were ill-prepared and not ready for this attack by Washington and his men. This victory is huge for the Americans as it shows, again, that they can stand up, they can be victorious, and they weren't going to just lay down and give up at this point in 1776. Time passes, and the following winter, again it's cold, and then there's many troops stationed at Valley Forge. Prior to this, there are some good events that have happened for the Americans that we'll get into tomorrow night's homework. But in the winter of 1777-1778, there were about 11,000 American soldiers stationed at Valley Forge. At Valley Forge, The soldiers are lacking in food, lacking in clothes, housing. The houses that they have there aren't very good at protecting them from the snow and the cold. About 1 in 4 soldiers are sick. However, Washington's able to take this and all these negatives of going on. The soldiers are ready to go home. They're not feeling good. They don't have the supplies. Their feet are bleeding because they don't have shoes and they're walking on snow. He's able to take this and use it as a time for good. He offers training and a fresh start to all the soldiers that are still around. They learn to march in ranks. They learn to fight as a team under some European leadership that we'll talk about also in tomorrow's notes. Valley Forge could have been a disaster that discouraged Americans, but it's used as a time to, again, encourage and train and be used for the benefit. Washington was very good at taking non-opportune times to encourage, times when the soldiers are in poor spirits, and lifting the spirits up. So we see 3 examples of Washington leading troops to victory, or helping us lead troops to victory. He inspired the troops. This is constant wherever he was at. He won a huge victory at Trenton, and he was able to take Valley Forge, a time that could have been extremely negative, and lead it into a very positive time. And coming out of Valley Forge in the spring of 1778, the Americans begin to win many of the battles, which will lead to victory. Tomorrow we're going to look a little bit more detail of what life was actually like at Valley Forge, reading some journal entries from a surgeon that lived at Valley Forge. And we're going to analyze the painting at Trenton. And is this painting accurate? What do we know about the actual event? We'll do some comparisons. And we'll continue to build some of our background knowledge, being ready to use this information in our Socratic seminar at the end of the unit on Is Freedom Worth the Risk? Have a good evening. We will pick up here tomorrow.